what would be like these viable migration paths for people? I don't know, maybe specifically using React or Gatsby users. Like, what would be like a logical options? What are the logical options forward for them?
Yep. So, we'll start if like from the perspective of an enterprise that's already using Gatsby, and again, like we're not saying that like just abandon it, but it is a good idea, especially for Gatsby, to plan ahead, since it's being sunsetted. It's not going to be properly actively developed anymore. So, going from Gatsby, I guess the natural progression would be Next.js. Like Jesus said, there's a lot of reusability. At the end of the day, both are using React, and probably you're going to be able to use the same components to some extent. Uh, but even then, like for example, a lot of times, even if we don't want to, or we want to keep, UI different from integration, maybe I've seen that pattern that a lot of companies use that. We have a package for UI, we have a different package of integrating that those UI elements into our implementation. Uh, but even if we do that, there's usually like some sort of uh, you know we bleed some of the opinions or like some of the components from our framework into the components. So there's probably going to be like some changes needed to be done to those components. So yeah, like identifying those elements is the way to go. At least, for example, in Next, uh, I mean, Vercel, it's also is we also need to, consider the position of Vercel. They're focusing a lot on AI, and we've seen in the past that they bring out features, but maybe they're not like uh, most mature, or they still have not been around for long to be calling them, mature enough for certain needs. So yeah, at least like for example, Next.js is a good contender, but you definitely have to take into account how Next.js and Vercel stands at this point, and see their roadmap to see like, okay, is this something that I'm going to work towards, and probably spend the next years working with and maintaining, or should I consider another tool for this?
Yeah, if you're deploying to Vercel, at some point it might be is using something like Next.js is the right decision because it's like pretty straightforward. And again, at some point, Next.js has, I mean, every framework has their opinions, are opinionated in some way. So if you're happy with that, it's totally fine. There's some other alternatives that we can mention. Just staying on the React, ecosystem. We can talk about React Router, which at some point, formerly Remix, but now Remix is something else. And it's probably confusing at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, sadly, it's somehow confusing. But yeah, there's it's less opinionated than Next.js, as you can probably see. Maybe your site is already on React Router. Might be upgrading to React Router 7 is the best option. If you're in Gatsby, there's things you can probably implement here and there. You can also have a static site. You can achieve a lot of the functionality that you can have similar to Gatsby, either or Next.js. Might be again if you have experience with huge React Router projects. That's your deal going that route. Again, it will depend. Again, as we mentioned, it depends if you want to stay on the on the same React, maybe those, Next and React Router could be an option. I know we have done some play around with Astro that can also could take advantage of React. I don't know, Carlos, you want to mention something about this?
Yeah, and Astro is an interesting tool. I mean, it's definitely less opinionated than most of these frameworks. Even from the fact that you can mix React with Vue there. I mean, I don't think that's a good idea, but that's definitely an option. Again, like from we haven't used Astro at a production level yet. We've just only used it for some internal tests. But it definitely like seems to need more, manual work. At the end of the day, like it's not as opinionated as these other frameworks, and that may be a good thing for you. Like if your team has a lot of expertise, if they have a lot of technical knowledge, then maybe for compliance of secure or for your own security reasons, maybe you want to be in control of more of aspects of your site. it could be a good idea to switch over to Astro. But again, like we've been saying, that depends, and maybe like if your team is not as confident in being able to implement these types of technology, like it will require some changes in the way you work with it. So maybe it's not the best tool for the work, but it's definitely a good option to consider.
Yeah,
Right.
and we're only mentioning, the surface of what, React, or React frameworks or tooling for. There's plenty of tools, like Vue on the Vue, ecosystem, like Vue.press or Nox or
Next.
whatever. But I want to stay on the React world for at least for this particular conversation.
Yeah. And that was actually my next question, like this decision framework for all of these technologies, like maybe it can be too much because you have like um, on one side you can still use your static site generator with other technologies, and you can have all of these workarounds that we talked at the beginning, but also we have all of these viable paths forward for React users using Next.js, React Router, Astro. But like in your experience, like if someone, like if a new client would approach to us and started to ask us like, okay, what should I do? What would be the right choice for me? Like what would be like maybe the step by step, or like the approach they would have to to take in order to actually have the best set of technologies, or the best technology for their particular case? Is there like any guide, or what? How would you help all of these enterprises, businesses that are choosing, or they are not actually sure of what to choose?
Yep. So, I mean, there's definitely, some criteria that you need to assess before, taking any decision. This, for example, like we were mentioning with your team, okay, what's your current team, expertise, uh, how many mid engineers, junior engineers, senior engineers, you have to take that into account, especially if you're doing a big migration, or like you're shifting the technology you use, that will definitely, be more maybe problematic, for less experienced engineers versus, more experienced ones. Also, like we were mentioning, okay, if you're coming from React, like using that as an example, Gatsby, if you're using Gatsby, like you probably want to stay using React. Uh, Maybe you want to switch something else, but if you're choosing a framework or a tool that already uses React, that means that your team will already have, a better level of expertise than if you're switching, for example, to into Vue, something like Nox, for example, and that would also, reduce the need to hire new people, because maybe, if your team is not, as experienced with Vue, for example, then okay, we're probably going to need at least, some sort of guidance from maybe an external, you're going to hire someone with more expertise, to guide your team, towards that goal, towards that migration. And also, what is your tolerance on, the learning curves? Like, do you want, or is your team okay, with learning, some big shift in the way we work with things? Or should we want, a more gradual migration? Like, and that would guide you towards, okay, maybe if we're okay with, a big change, if we have a team with big expertise, we could use something less opinionated, like Astro that we mentioned. And if not, okay, maybe we should stick with something like Next, that we know, or it aligns with Gatsby, better than say Astro or some other tool.
Okay.
Yeah, and definitely considering, I mean, it's like small site, smaller side, micro site. It might be an event site that it has a few pages.
Mhm.
Is there's an API behind where the content is coming? Is content coming from like Markdown files or MDX? I mean, if those files contain React or JSX. Again, and there's plenty of things to understand and making sure you are aware of to take that decision, and also understanding like it's a static site enough. Do I need like dynamic content? Do I need to like be able to somehow update content from external source? And can I, update only that particular page? Again, it's a pretty interesting challenge, and that you will be like facing when taking a decision from a framework. And the right answer is there's no silver bullet. There will be frameworks that are better doing something than others, but in the end, it's a lot of that decision will be based on a lot of your own experience with frameworks and platforms as well.
Right. Yeah, yeah, like it's a decision that you definitely don't want to take lightly. So if you want to know specifically for your case, you can also reach out to us on our website on octahedra.com.